Welcome to the Cricket Badger IPL Daily Podcast 2021. The Indian Premier League 14th edition. It's great to have you with us. From the first match all the way to the final. Chennai Super Kings, Delhi Capitals, Kolkata Knight Riders, Mumbai Indians, Punjab Kings, Rajasthan Royals, Royal Challengers Bangalore, Sunrisers Hyderabad. May the best team win. Brought to you in association with Who Knows Wins. Put your money where your mates are, and play along with the Cricket Badger.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Cricket Badger IPL Daily. I remain to be not James Butler. I am Nakul Pande, the Deputy Badger. James is off watching some people hit a yellow ball rather than a red ball, but we are here. The Badger never sleeps. And I'm joined by Rito, Maitra and Anand Bhika today to very briefly go through the last two games of the group stages, because there wasn't a lot riding on it despite mathematical improbabilities. But more importantly, we will wrap up the group stage and review why each team made it and didn't. We'll have a look at the playoffs, which are now set. A reminder of those playoffs, which will be the Delhi Capitals and the Chennai Super Kings in the first qualifier on Sunday. The Royal Challengers Bangalore and the Kolkata Knight Riders in the eliminator on Monday. And then so on and so forth. And we'll also be picking our team of the group stage, our best 11 of the group stage, which could be open to change come the final Badger team of the tournament if there are some extraordinary performances. But first, Rito and Anand, just briefly, very briefly, talk about the last two games today. We'll start with events in Abu Dhabi. Rito, Mumbai needed a ridiculous number of runs to give themselves a chance of winning by 171 runs. And that seemed to sharpen the minds, particularly of Ishan Kishan and Surya Kumar Yadav.
Yes, Rohit Sharma did the first thing rightly, that's winning the toss, and the cheer that went around the ground at almost that Mumbai went through the playoffs. But still, when you need to win a T20 game by 171 runs, you need an Herculean effort, Nakul. And even though the Mumbai batters gave themselves a chance of a slimmer of hope to get through the playoffs, but Jason Roy and the SRH batters had other ideas, although they didn't win, but at least KKR went through to the playoffs this time around.
High-scoring game, 2-3-5 plays 193. Anand, I think actually all the pitches are, before we get onto the game and briefly get onto the RCB game versus Delhi, which was a much more exciting game. The pitches actually seem to be getting a little bit better as this tournament has gone on. We're seeing a few more runs scored in these last few days.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It feels like almost the batters have, adjusted to the pitches a little, as well as you're not seeing the ball stop as much, because you certainly saw that with Ishan Kishan. When he started off today, some of those shots a little iffy, but you were able to hit the ball on the up, and you almost were able to time the ball much better. So it certainly looks like the pitches are getting better, and we saw that across the board, across both matches. It felt like certainly the Mumbai match was very high scoring, partly because of how Mumbai decided to approach this. They didn't have a choice. They had to blaze away. So it certainly has been, the pitches are getting better, and also probably is a good indicator to how things will be in the World Cup.
Yeah, we can only hope. People were very much fearful of that the pitches would become very slow and very difficult to play on as the tournament went on and as the World Cup approached. But even Sharjah was starting to see a few more runs scored, which perhaps bodes well for the eliminator, which will be the Royal Challengers Bangalore and the Kolkata Knight Riders. Rito, we were talking before we went on air. The KKR coming out on the right side of a net run rate equation for the first time in 3 years, and handily so in the end. I thought Ian Bishop yesterday was talking about the need for teams to not leave net run rate considerations until the last minute. Do you think teams have been guilty of that? Do you think it will be something that next year, in particular, those teams who the teams will actually be prioritizing a little bit more, and maybe we'll try and be a little bit more ruthless in those early stages of the tournament rather than leaving it all to the end?
Well, to be honest, I'm not a big fan of the net run rate, Nakul, because as Kolkata have been on the wrong side of it a lot of times in the recent past, uh, I prefer that bonus point system that if you win by certain runs, you get a bonus point. You win within certain overs, you get a bonus point. That gives the teams the motivation to do it in certain overs, almost in with net run rate. It's like an afterthought for teams. Probably come the last 2 weeks of the tournament, that's when teams look at it. Otherwise, they don't probably. So the
I,
bonus points.
it comes to much the same thing as an extra reward for winning games by more. But Anand, teams probably should be looking at it, shouldn't they? Regardless of whichever the method. I mean, net run rate offers much the same offers much the same mechanism, and arguably you could say applies to every game rather than just those games that you happen to be winning by a large margin or whatever.
I certainly think so. I mean, I think T20 tactics have evolved as time has gone on. The IPL is not a new tournament now. It's a very mature tournament. People exactly know how things will progress. So, as teams get towards the, if they're cantering towards a win, maybe there is a necessity and an urge to actually go harder. There are times when sometimes, teams try to, take it to the last ball. I don't think that's a need. Every team needs to be looking at the net run rate and trying to go, especially if you're in a good situation, go as hard as you can.
To my mind, that rewards aggressive cricket. Though the way that net run rate is sometimes talked about is minimizing losses, but I think I agree with you that I think there have been a number of occasions where teams have not been ruthless enough in winning positions, and but ultimately, if you only win 7 games from 7, you leave yourself in this position. The table has ended up this year. We'll run it across the bottom of the screen now. Ended up not being quite as close as last year. There was only 2 teams level on 14 points, with a bit of a gap above and below. So we'll go through the teams that did make it into the playoffs and what they did to get there first. Delhi Capitals, 10 wins and only 4 losses, 20 points. Rito, is this the best Delhi Capitals that we've seen yet?
Yeah, I certainly think so. Last year, as we mentioned on the podcast earlier, that they at the end they looked like they ran out of steam. But this year, with the IPL in 2 halves, they are looking like they are peaking at the right moment. So probably they can win the prize this time around. The Capitals, they have most of the bases covered. One or two links are missing probably, but still. They have that qualifier buffer. Even if they miss out on the first qualifier, they can still get to the finals.
What would you say that missing link is? What would make them an even stronger team?
Well, Shamran Hitmeyer, although he looks like he scores runs in one match and misses out in 2 matches, and their captain Rishabh Pant also is not scoring runs consistently. So these are the 2 missing links that I would say they probably need to look going into the playoffs.
Anand, would you go along with that if you're doing a SWOT analysis of Delhi Capitals? Where do those where would you rank the various factors that have gone into them topping the table?
Well, I think part of it is they have the most balanced squad, right? Apart from Mumbai, which other squad has the same sort of riches that Delhi does? So, I think they're already very well balanced. They have good pace, good spin, as well as great batsmen. I think when we talk about the missing link, I think Rishabh Pant. So Rishabh Pant, I think, has gone across this IPL scoring at about a strike rate of 120. This is not typically Rishabh Pant. He's usually amongst the very best, when we look at strike rate. So there certainly has been some sort of difference in there. But I mean, they look really balanced squad and, look to have a great shot at winning the title.
Any weaknesses, any glaring weaknesses that you would say for them ahead of the game on Saturday, on Sunday rather, particularly, and anything that Chennai Super Kings could particularly exploit?
I think part of it depends on the pitch. The only weakness I would say is that their spinners, while they're very good, so they got Ashwin and Akshar, who both are very good spinners, but they're not wicket takers. Now, thankfully for them, they have Avesh Khan, who's doing well, and obviously Kagiso, as well as Norkia, who both can take wickets. So I think, not too much of a glaring weakness, but these 2 spinners tend to be more, they tend to save runs more. They're very economical, but they don't really take a lot of wickets. But apart from that, very well balanced squad.
Let's flip that a little bit. We're kind of combining here the review of the group stage and the look ahead to the playoffs, because the last two games of the tournament between the Mumbai Indians and the Sunrisers Hyderabad and the Delhi Capitals versus the Royal Challengers Bangalore were fairly inconsequential, although the RCB game was a thriller in the end, and we'll talk about that. Actually, that does bring me on to one point. Rito, it's hard to see Delhi and Chennai both coming into this game off losses. Chennai off 3 losses in a row, but Delhi, was this a tactic to try and get all of their fielding errors out in one game?
I'm not sure. We're probably talking about Avish Khan, Nakul, the over that he bowled. It will take a mental toll on him. The last 2 deliveries, it looks like he is petrified, really, of Srikar Bharat. So that's something that CSK can take advantage of going into that first qualifier. So that's one they can probably target that one piece of the Avish Khan.
Well, we saw a number of fielding errors as well. We saw some dropped catches, one particularly simple one from R. Ashwin at short third, and we saw a few errors as well. But let's move ahead to Chennai. Lost a little bit of steam coming into the tail end of the tournament, losing 3 games, one quite handily to surprisingly to Rajasthan Royals, considering what Rajasthan ended up doing. What's the where are Chennai dangerous? What allowed them to bounce back from a terrible season last year, and what do they still need to slot into place if they're going to win the tournament again? Anand, if you want to take that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. When we look at Chennai, I think to me the balance at the very top has been integral. The way Faf and Ruturaj have been able to play has really been a revelation, especially Ruturaj, right? We all knew that Faf could play, but they both have scored an addition of 500 runs. What it allows is the rest of the team to really go for it. So you see Moeen Ali, I mean, his stat really is to go for it. And, Moeen's done okay. So has Ambati Raidu. I think Raidu is striking about 150 strike rate. So what it does is it allows everybody to sort of play freely. Unfortunately, I do think they have that little weakness. I'm a big MSD fan, but things have started to catch up. I mean, he's got 96 runs in this whole IPL, and I think the strike rate's about 95. So he's a legend. Love MSD, but I think things are maybe catching up a little. What has happened with them is the top order has done very well, and I think that's really helped them. And the other thing that's really key is Jadeja has changed as a batsman. In the last 2-3 years, Jadeja really goes hammers and tongs, and he used to be around the 120, 130 strike rate, but now Jadeja, I think last year was 170. This year, I think is 150 or 140s or so on. I think that's changed. And then I think the other thing that's been important for them, which is quite weird to me, is Lord Thakur. So Lord Thakur is an enigma, right? Who could have predicted that Lord Thakur is going to, obviously do well in this test? But look at the IPL. He's taken 18 wickets for Chennai. These are things that you can't predict. And, it's just amazing what he's done out there. So, that's probably helped Chennai.
It would be harsh to say this, but Shardul Thakur, the Jaginder Sharma de nos jours. But Thakur has genuinely been excellent, Rito, this season. And the Chennai bowling has been almost uniformly excellent throughout this tournament.
Yes, as Anand rightly mentioned, that it has all started happening for Lord Thakur from that England Test series, and he has carried that form into the IPL. And talking about Jadeja's batting, look at Thakur's batting; it has just improved remarkably, really. Now, the CSK, their middle order going into the playoffs. Moeen Ali, Raina, and Raidu, they haven't been into the runs consistently. So and their captain this season. Remarkably, a lot of the captains have not scored a lot of runs, and they still are getting into the side because they're captains. So these are the things that they will go forward going into that playoff.
They're coming into this off 3 losses in a row. Do you expect them to be able to turn around that momentum? And I don't really like the word momentum, but that form, and recapture some of that intensity. Would it be correct to say that they were sort of taking these last 3 games as almost like a rest period?
If you look at the last 3 games, they have batted first on all of the 3 games. So they are a good chasing side. They don't defend so well, and the loss of Sam Curran has been a body blow to them. It might look that they have a ready-made replacement in DJ Bravo, but Sam Curran is a player that MSD and CSK had invested a lot in him, and to lose him into this last part of the tournament is a body blow for them.
Bravo's been bowling extremely well, but doesn't, and actually has refound some of his hitting form, so they haven't particularly missed Sam Curran, who didn't do particularly well in his 2 games. They do have a replacement, Dominic Drakes, the young left arm quick. But finally, from both of you, before we move on, predictions for that first qualifier.
So go ahead, Rito.
Go ahead.
So I was going to say that, when we think about of the 4 teams that are qualified, to me, Chennai is the weakest of the lot. So KKR has got a lot of momentum going into it. RCB looks very well balanced, and to me, DC looks the strongest of the lot. So to me, KKR, I think KKR is the weakest team of the lot.
So you're predicting a Delhi win on Sunday.
I am.
Rito?
Yeah, I would say if CSK chase, then they probably have a chance. But defending, I don't see them winning that game.
Curiously, a clean sweep for me. I think Dubai as well, playing on a slightly faster pitch, I think should help Delhi. Although they've done well this season on slower pitches than they would like. I said a little while ago that I think Delhi are the strongest team in the tournament. So curiously, three Badgers all going against CSK, which I don't think has ever happened on this show before. Let's look ahead to Monday and the eliminator. RCB beat Delhi Capitals off the last ball, and we have to talk about Anand, about KS Bharat. They finally found they want Maxwell and AB down the order, but they finally found a number 3 who isn't just delaying things, but he's actually making a significant contribution today.
Yes.
And indeed the rest of the tournament.
He's certainly done well, hasn't he? And today, he bided his time, and he did not look phased by what was coming out there. So I think they've certainly discovered somebody out there who can kind of take over that cudgels of number 3. He's got, I think against Mumbai, he had a decent 32, 44 against the Royals. So this guy certainly can play, and maybe you're seeing the emergence of a really good player. What it also does is it allows Maxwell and AB to maybe flip flop if necessary. And today we saw AB come out a little early and Maxwell stay back, and you clearly saw what Maxwell can do. Although, as you mentioned, there was a little charity towards Maxwell. He could have been out plenty of times. Also, I think there were a few 4s that were let go. So, but I think, Bharat has done very well, and I think looks like a good find as we go forward.
Do you expect there to be any changes for RCB? The one player you could say is genuinely not performing for them is Dan Christian. They do have some overseas options. Rito, would you expect them to make that change, or do you think they're going to keep faith with the big Australian?
No, I don't expect them to make any changes going into the eliminator after winning such a dramatic last ball thriller against DC, who have topped the group now. So that will give them a lot of confidence going into that eliminator against KKR.
It is at Sharjah, which is a pitch that's getting a little bit better. But KKR have played quite a few games there this season and have done well with their spin strength. Obviously, they were not involved in proceedings today. They were able to just watch the carnage, but they have been Anand, really the story of the second half of the tournament.
They really have been, and I think they certainly seem to be the form team. So apart from DC looking very good, I think KKR has looked very well as well, and it feels like almost the little break has helped them. And I could be recalling this incorrectly, but I think in the last 7 matches they won 5. So they've really done very well, and I think the second match is actually very interesting because it looks like it's a bit of a toss-up between RCB and KKR. RCB having the very balanced team, and KKR sort of having momentum. Although, I sometimes look at momentum as not being that relevant in some of these tournaments. You often see teams qualify for the playoffs, and they kind of, at the very last minute, and they manage to win tournaments. So, this one is certainly going to be tougher to call. I still think that RCB are going to nip KKR in that qualifier.
Rito, by the sort of half smile, half grimace on your face, I assume you don't agree with that.
No, I don't. Of course, Nakul, I'm the KKR Badger. I'm the one who takes down James Butler on this podcast. So yeah, I expect KKR to win now. The form that they have shown, the only missing link with KKR now is the captain's form. If Morgan finds form, I expect them to win the trophy this time around.
We don't know if Andre Russell is going to be fit for that game. You think Rito they can absorb not having Dre Russ in a major game?
Yeah, well, looking at the pitches in Sharjah, Nakul, although they are getting better, but still it's spin dominant over there. So Shakib Al Hassan is a very able replacement for Andre Russell, although not that fast bowling kind of all rounder, but still a very good all rounder in his own right. So yeah, it's lucky for KKR that they are playing at Sharjah, the eliminator, and if they qualify for that second qualifier, so it should serve them right playing at Sharjah now.
Maybe 2 games and then a small adaptation for Dubai. Narayan and Chakravarti have been brilliant for them. A little bit coming off the boil for Venkatesh Iyer, though, at the top of the order, and there is a slight worry that with Gill and Iyer both taking a little bit of time to get going. But let's have we've had your predictions we've had RCB from Anand and KKR from Rito. I am just going to side with RCB on this one because of the because I like the balance of RCB and I think that KKR without Andre Russell probably will not quite have that X factor in the middle order. But if that is going to be a fascinating game on Sunday. Let's look briefly at some of the teams who didn't make it. Mumbai Indians, champions 2 years running, but didn't make the playoffs on net run rate. It's a little simple to say, Anand, but was it just, it seems to me, too many players out of form at the same time?
It really feels like it, right? The batting sort of struggled, and you saw today, if the batting gets going, this squad is very well balanced. They can really be very aggressive if necessary. And you just saw Ishan Kishan completely go off the boil apart from the last couple of games. Today's knock was fantastic, but previous to that, he was really struggling. Matter of fact, I don't know whether Kohli's words helped out a little or, just take a little bit of a break, because I think he didn't play a match or two, and, he's come back with some blazing form. The same goes for Surya. So when I was looking back to last season, you would see a ton of these players scored more than 400 runs, and you had Pollard and Hardik go very hard towards the end. So this year, though, when we look at Pollard and Hardik, they really haven't been scoring too many runs. So I think Hardik really 127 runs across the tournament, has been injured, hasn't been able to bowl, and the strike rate for Hardik is 113. This is very un-Hardik like. I mentioned Pant earlier, kind of not doing as well as before. Hardik, this has not been a great IPL for him. And the same goes for probably his brother as well. Not a great IPL. They haven't been able to, really do as well as they did. So, but I think really batting has been the key form. And when we look at bowling, the one difference I would point out is Trent Bolt took a ton of wickets in the last IPL. And if you look at Trent Bolt this year, 13 wickets, he's done well, but not as good as how good Trent Bolt can be.
Also, Quinton de Kock, massively out of form most of the season, struggled against spin. And Mumbai, Rito, I don't know if they exactly picked their squad for the Wankhede. It's hard to say exactly what was in their mind, but they weren't able to get as much out of Rahul Chahar this season as they have been. Just shifting tack slightly, do you think that Rahul Chahar might be looking a little nervously over his shoulder with potential World Cup squad changes coming up?
Yeah, I think the way Yuzvendra Chahal is bowling for RCB, as well as Kohli is the captain of RCB, so they can make changes till 30th of October. Till which date? I'm not too sure really.
I think it's I've heard the 10th and I've heard the 16th. Yeah. I think even for the teams in the Super 12. So there's a little bit of time.
Could we also think about Bishnoi? Now I know he's very young, but he has come along in heaps and spades. And I know it might be a danger to throw in a very young green kid into a World Cup squad, but Bishnoi has looked very good in the last few matches.
Genuine. Actually, Punjab had quite a good season with the ball. If you think of Mohammad Shami and Arshdeep Singh as well, but they continue to be absolutely chaotic.
Some of their decision making has been interesting, hasn't it? And I always look at this. They need to figure out, if Punjab comes back and retains Rahul, they need to figure out how to give him some support, because they really haven't gotten any support for Rahul. You clearly could see Rahul, without having that sort of pressure to anchor the innings, is a different batsman than the Rahul we saw yesterday. Rahul is really, to me, if apart from maybe Prithvi Shaw, might be the most destructive Indian batsman out there. Maybe Prithvi Shaw and Pant, right? But Rahul is that good. And you often see Rahul try to play that anchor role. And I don't think that has really helped. So Gale this year wasn't able to get going. Deepak Hooda wasn't able to get going. And, we saw Aiden Markram come in towards the end and, add a semblance of, some batting support for him. But I think Pooran, 85 runs in 12 matches at a strike rate of 111. I think that's castled them. It's really the batting that hasn't gone very well for them. And Rahul can continue to play this anchor role, doesn't work out as well.
Mayank Agarwal's had a decent season, but Rito, they did it with Maxwell last year. They did it with Pooran this year. Punjab, not a great place to be if you're a theoretically world-class middle-order batter.
Yeah, I think there's something in the culture of the team. Look at Maxwell. He has moved to RCB and he has looked as a very different player. It's something must be with RCB with Punjab. And Anil Kumble, I don't want to take names, but there's something wrong with Anil Kumble, Nakul.
Well, far be it from me to go against a legend of Indian cricket, but Punjab Kings continue to make the wrong decisions at the wrong time. Such is the nature of the tournament. The 2 more wins, one of which they definitely should have won against Rajasthan Royals, and they could have been returning to the playoffs. Rajasthan Royals obviously didn't help them with the loss of the overseas players. Got half a season out of Butler, half a game between them and Stokes and Archer, but 25 players they used in 14 games. Whatever the plan was, Anand, that wasn't it. You can't really hope to have sustained success with that much chopping and changing, can you?
It's really hard, I think. And, as you mentioned, I think, not having Butler there, missing some of the overseas players certainly didn't help. But also adding in some of the players didn't work either, because Livingston, how good a form has Livingston been in England? In the Blast, he has been absolutely unstoppable. And then he comes here, plays 5 matches, makes 42 runs, right? So, and you certainly want to give him a break, but some of their selections, haven't really played out. We talk about Mumbai players losing form. I think the Rajasthan Royal players also lost form. What's going on with Mahipal Lomrol as well as Rian Parag? Now they've been in the squad for a few, I think 2 or 3 years now, and they haven't taken the next step. Now, both of them very talented. We just need to just need to see the next step out there. And I think the last one, and this has been panned all around, Chris Morris. I think he's taken the most amount of wickets for them, but he hasn't exactly panned out, has he?
Had an exceptional first half of the season and a disastrous second half of the season, 3 games in particular. There's a very good video and article done by Jared Kimber about this. Signs of life, though, for Rajasthan. Left arm fast bowlers, they somehow managed to pick 5 different left arm seamers at some point. But Rito, Mustafizur's back to his best, and Chetan Sakaria having a breakthrough season. They're going to be, if not top of Rajasthan's list to retain, then certainly in demand next season.
Yeah, Chetan Sakaria can be one of those emerging players of the season. One thing that has pleased me about Rajasthan is their captain, Sanju Samson. Sanju Samson, often he has that 1 or 2 knocks in the IPL and then just goes cold. But this season he has scored over 400 runs and he has consistently grafted those innings out when his team has been in trouble. So that's one pleasing thing from an Indian point of view, that Sanju Samson looks to be in the right track at long last.
Batting a little bit slower than he usually did this season. It'll be very interesting to see where he ends up next year. We don't really know what the auction rules will be. Sunrisers, a disastrous season really from beginning to end. 3 different captains for various reasons. Warner ending up as a flag bearer. And not managing to get Mujib more than 1 game, Nubby barely barely playing. The words "rip it up and start again" spring to mind.
I think just based on what they had, it might be a good idea. However, again, they also have been hit with this form bug, right? Doesn't it feel like Kane Williamson really not much of an impact this season? Certainly he scored a few runs, but hasn't been able to get that impact. And Warner, how often can we look at IPL runs scored? And Warner's at the very top of it. Pretty much every season you will see that. Last season, not so much, and obviously not this season. It's been interesting how much of a loss Warner has been, because I think he scored a few runs, but the strike rate's been at 108. I think he scored about 200 runs or somewhere close to it. So it's interesting how they haven't been able to develop either. And Abdul Samad looks great. I feel like, again, another person like Rian Parag, it'll be great to actually get some momentum out there. And then lastly, I think Manish Pandey. So Manish Pandey often plays the anchor role. Manish Pandey really doesn't seem to be able to accelerate as much as he can. And I think that certainly hurt them as well. But the biggest loss to me is Dave Warner, because I think IPL legend, really, with the amount of runs he scored over the years.
An IPL legend, but perhaps coming towards the end of his useful life as a top-level cricketer. Also, Bhuvneshwar Kumar not able to take as many wickets as usual. Somewhere in there, Rashid Khan had another quietly excellent season. But we'll move on. We'll dissect all of this in more detail as we go. But we do have selections to be made. I asked Rito and Anand to pick their team of the group stage. The only real restrictions were that it had to be an actually balanced 11 with that you could put on the field and would be able to hold its own, and that a maximum of 4 overseas players. I've done one as well, but we'll go to the panelists first. Rito, you were talking about how you were actually struggling to pick this team, but what did you come up with?
Yeah, so my 2 openers are KL Rahul and Rituraj Gaikwad. In at 3 is Maxwell, then Tripathi at 4, ABD at 5, although ABD didn't have the greatest of seasons, but still he has almost 2 innings left on him, and I expect him to do something ridiculous. And he has that fear factor around him that bowlers don't like often. Then Dinesh Karthik has scored a lot of useful runs for KKR, coming in the death and giving the innings that impetus needed in the end. Then at 7, I would say it's Rashid Khan. 8, Akshar Patel. He has been very economical for DC. And then Varun Chakravarti, he has been a revelation for KKR. He has been economical and he has taken a lot of wickets for KKR. And my 2 fast bowlers are Hershel Patel and Avesh Khan. And another place is Thakur, probably. Thakur just lost at the batting. Otherwise, it was looking a bit weak on the batting front.
Well, you got Rahul and Gaikwad opening, Maxwell at 3, Tripathi at 4, AB de Villiers at 5, Dinesh Karthik at 6, Rashid Khan, Akshar Patel, Varun Chakravarti at 7, 8, and 9, Hershel Patel, and Avesh Khan. Your overseas players are Glenn Maxwell, AB de Villiers, and Rashid Khan. Only the 3 overseas players going a very Delhi approach. There, you stuck with KL Rahul despite all the issues about his strike rate.
Yeah, he has scored over 626 runs, and he has taken that responsibility. And it's not that he has scored that very slowly. He has scored them at a strike rate of 138.8. That's very good enough to get into any side, Nakul. So I think he is the orange cap holder, and he gets into my IP11.
Anand, does he make it into yours?
So he does, and I had a lot of thinking about this, but he's going to make it into my 11, but not at the spot that he typically plays, which is going to be very different for everybody. So for me, the 2 folks who open the batting are going to be people who really can go from the ball 1, and I got Prithvi Shaw in there, 400 runs over the season. I think a strike rate about 150, really gets a good impetus going. Partnering him will be Mayank at number 2. He's another person who gets going pretty quickly and, has got 441 runs, at a strike rate of 140 or so. So, again, 2 good players who can really get going. At number 3 walks in the unheralded Rahul Tripathi, as Rito also had him in there. Again, another guy who really has done really well when the opportunities he's gotten, whether it's up the order or lower down the order. So he does well. Number 4, I think Maxwell. This might be his best season. ever. Uh, at number 5, I got ABD. Now, I think this has not been a great season for ABD, but you just put ABD in there for two things. He can either be he can either be a keeper or he can also make some runs. Uh, at number 6, and this is where I got Rahul in there. So Rahul, to me, if he plays unfettered like he can play, is can rival ABD, and so that's where I got Rahul in there.
This is a very Gujarat Lions approach to take an
It
IPL
very
reference
much
from a few
is.
years ago of shoehorning in openers everywhere. Okay, Prithvi Shaw, Mayank Agarwal, Rahul Tripathi, Glenn Maxwell, AB de Villiers, and KL Rahul is a pretty formidable, in theory, looking top 6.
And to me, if wickets fall early, if say Mayank and Shaw go early, you move Rahul up to number 3 and move Tripathi down. So that gives you a little more flexibility. So I think this is a very strong lineup. And Rahul, wherever he comes in at number 3 or number 6, uh, he doesn't really need to play the anchor role anymore because you got a lot of different players around there. And ABD, the same goes for ABD. So between Maxwell, ABD, Rahul, you kind of flip the order around as you want it.
Is he keeping wicket for both of you, or is he captaining for both of you?
So yes, he is captaining for me, and between keeping wickets, yes, he is keeping wickets because ABD also gets a little time off just because he's a little older. Allow him to just focus on his batting and see what happens from there. For my bowlers, this is where it gets interesting. I got 5 bowlers in the team, and the first bowler is going to be Jadeja. And now, really, that's the all-rounder slot. Jadeja can come in, takes a few wickets. He's not really going to take a ton of wickets, but he can keep the runs down. He doesn't need to bowl his whole quota of overs, but if he does, he still goes at about 660. And he also gets us some runs. So he's got 227 runs at 146 strike rate. Last year, 170 strike rate. Jadeja has to be in there as all-rounder. So number 8 comes in the guy who I feel nobody can take out of the team, Rashid Khan. Rashid Khan just is, 18 wickets, doesn't give runs away, is, I think, the best spinner in the competition. So without power, number 8 comes in Rashid Khan. Then we come down to some of the specialists. And, these 3 can vary based on, the batting really doesn't matter because they're not going to bat. So I think, we got Bumrah to come in at the start, bowl some, pretty fast spells at the very top of the order, as well as bowl those Yorkers and cutters at the very end. We got Varun Chakravarti, who can also bowl at the top, get some spin going, some of the get a little mystery. And finally, we got Hershel Patel, because Hershel Patel is going to bowl all the slowies, the 19 different off-cutters that he has, because you cannot keep somebody out who's taken 30 wickets in IPL season. So Hershel makes it in too.
Yeah, just needs 2 more to equal the records in a single season set by Dwayne Bravo back in a much longer season, and he's got potentially 3 games to do it. So let's look at the players across both of your 11s. KL Rahul is in both of your 11s. Glenn Maxwell, Rahul Tripathi, AB de Villiers, Rashid Khan, Hershel Patel, and Varun Chakravarti. It's a clean sweep for some of those. My 11 is a little bit different, but Prithvi Shaw and Ruturaj Gaikwad opening the batting. Because so it's a little bit of a combination of yours. So Indian ended up as Indian opening batters, and I love the intent they both show. I ended up with Sanju Samson as captain and keeper at number 3, basically as a balance of the 11 issue because I needed the wicket keeper. And actually, a lot of the wicket keeper batters this year, you'd either be picking someone who doesn't do the job very, very often, like de Villiers, or you're shoehorning in someone who is obviously a highly talented player, but hasn't been doing quite so well. Rahul Tripathi slots in at number 4. He was KKR's best player in the first half of the tournament when they were struggling, and has been excellent in the second half of the tournament. Glenn Maxwell, enough said. Shimron Hetmeyer actually makes it into my team of the tournament, striking at 170 for the season, which is what sealed it for me. A genuine finisher, death hitter now, which is not a role he does for the West Indies, but a role I would like him to do for the West Indies. Ravindra Jadeja, again, enough said, really. And Hershel Patel, again, was always going to make it in. I've gone pretty second half dominant in my specialist bowlers. Lockie Ferguson and Anrich Nortje, neither of whom played in the first half of the season, bafflingly, really. And I'm definitely on record of having said this at the time. Both of them high pace, can bowl in any stage of the innings, and have been proving wicket taking and economical. And Yuzvendra Chahal, who I think is one player who didn't make it into either of your 11s, but I think has been superb. Varun Chakravarti, very unlucky to miss out. Avesh Khan, a little bit unlucky to miss out. Raidu de Villiers as well. I didn't have Rashid Khan, and I was thinking about it. I don't know if this is just a question of how it's a little bit like with Lionel Messi in football, is that he's so consistently excellent that even just what would be an unbelievable season for anyone else is just a kind of a normal season for Rashid Khan. But we do have some players across who ended up making it in across both teams. Oh, I left out KL Rahul as well. Though he ended up with a decent strike rate for the season, there were a number of innings where he could be argued to have lost the Punjab the game by going so long. And I completely agree with you. I'd love to see him unleashed next season because we've seen what a wonderful player he is. But Rahul Tripathi, Glenn Maxwell, Hershel Patel. Actually, I think because of my slightly left field selections, the only players making it in across every team. But I think those three are 11s that would take on most teams in the world and do pretty well. We'll get those out for you on Twitter as well. But until then, and James will be in touch and all over Twitter about what we're doing for the rest of the tournament. But we'll certainly be here for the remaining playoff games as Delhi and Chennai clash in Dubai. Then RCB take on KKR and a winner takes all. And then we go into the second qualifier. And for the final on Friday the 15th. And then 2 days later, it's the T20 World Cup. Cricket never sleeps, and neither does the Cricket Badger. Thank you very much to Anand, Bhika, and Rito Maitra. I've been your Deputy Badger, Nakul Pande. And until next time, from everyone here at the Cricket Badger, it's goodbye.